They're moving.
Yeah, they're moving. They've been moving from COVID.
How many people moved out of your state, California?
Oh, I know.
Under Newsom?
Yeah, no. People do move.
A
There's no
million.
doubt about that. People move in America, and you're right.
No, but they're not moving because they want a better view. They like to keep more of their money
Yes,
that
that's
they
true.
earn.
Yeah, that's true.
Florida is a really good case study. So when DeSantis became governor, there were 250,000 more registered Democrats in Florida when he became governor 8 years.
Bill Maher is blasting progressives for hollowing out reliably blue cities by chasing the activist fringe instead of everyday voters. He argues residents feel unsafe, ignored, and financially squeezed, and that this strategic gamble risks long-term damage to the Democratic Party's credibility and electoral future nationwide.
I read that the current mayor of Chicago has an approval rating of 6.6%.
Round it up. Stop.
I mean, you were just the ambassador to Japan. If that was your approval rating in Japan, they would do harakiri on live TV.
They would do it at 27.
I mean, what's going on in Chicago as the
Look, I mean, we were talking about this a little earlier. I mean, you have also the mayor of New York not doing well. Obviously, other things also here in Los Angeles not doing well, the mayor here. Look, and then you got mayors like the mayor of San Francisco and other cities that are doing well. So I would say, look, there is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances.
Rahm Emanuel argues that Chicago's mayor is mired in a dismal 6.6% approval rating for reasons that are neither mysterious nor ideological. In his view, voters confront three relentless realities every day: public safety concerns, fiscal instability, and struggling schools. Crime remains a constant worry, city finances appear disordered, and families see an education system that continues to disappoint their children. What frustrates residents most is the perception that City Hall lacks urgency and sustained focus on these bread-and-butter issues. Emanuel insists leadership is not about lofty speeches or symbolic positioning. It is about fixing what is visibly broken in people's daily lives. Parents fear for their children's academic future. Commuters question whether their neighborhoods are secure. Taxpayers wonder how their money is being spent. The anger is personal, not abstract. According to Emanuel, the mayor's problem is not communication strategy but misplaced priorities, and voters are signaling unmistakably that their patience has run out.
We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of the culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster.
Yeah.
And our school, and I'll say this about our schools: I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom. I agree. We had the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they and got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it.
Rahm's point underscores a broader frustration with public education. Standards are slipping, outcomes are uneven, and too many classrooms are struggling, yet national debate has often shifted toward cultural flashpoints rather than core academic performance. Parents asking why their children cannot read proficiently or compete globally feel sidelined by arguments that affect only a small share of students. Schools exist to deliver learning, safety, and opportunity, not to become battlegrounds for ideological disputes. Critics argue that Democratic leaders elevated symbolic fights instead of concentrating on measurable improvement. The consequence is growing distrust. Families feel unheard, students fall further behind, and confidence in institutions erodes year after year. What should have been a focused effort to rebuild academic excellence has instead become politically charged, leaving many to see not just a policy misstep but a generational setback.
To be fair, this is actually...
I was being fair.
No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish, I give you a chance. Cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic states, you go look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that. of Florida. What do they have? The streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party.
Fareed Zakaria's warning resonates with a growing number of observers who believe many Democratic-led cities are drifting into decline. Residents describe heavy tax burdens, thick layers of regulation, and weakening public safety that make daily life harder than it should be. Small businesses struggle to survive under mounting costs and compliance demands. Middle-class families feel punished for staying, while essential services appear slower and less reliable. When housing grows unaffordable and neighborhoods feel less secure, people begin relocating in search of stability. The migration from deep blue urban centers to regions promising lower taxes, streamlined rules, and firmer law enforcement reflects more than partisan preference. It reflects a demand for livable communities. Voters are not necessarily chasing ideology, they're chasing functionality. They want cities that maintain infrastructure, control crime, and manage budgets responsibly. When governments seem more inclined to lecture than to deliver basics, residents eventually look elsewhere for competence and accountability.
Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
Hey,
and I think
I live in L.A.
Right. If the Democrats have to own this and realize the answer to everything is not more taxes, more regulation. People are fed up of that, and they feel that it isn't working.
The Democrats, look, as somebody who produced the best graduation growth in the country, and we changed our high school.
You were a good mayor, I agree.
No, that's not the point. The point was we changed, but I'll take that. The point isn't the rules. The point is the results. And the party has gotten way too focused on what the rules are.
Critics argue that Democrats have long prioritized regulation over measurable outcomes. The instinct, they say, is to layer new rules onto nearly every issue, from public speech to zoning permits, without evaluating whether existing policies function effectively. The result is a bureaucratic maze that slows even routine tasks. Simple repairs or renovations can require multiple approvals, extended reviews, and stacks of paperwork that stretch timelines from days into months. Small businesses feel the squeeze most acutely, but homeowners and workers encounter the same inertia. Expanding a storefront, upgrading a property, or launching a new project often means waiting in line while costs climb. Accountability appears diffuse when agencies stall. Instead of trimming ineffective policies, leadership frequently adds more committees, more compliance steps, and more oversight bodies. Over time, this accumulation breeds stagnation. Citizens are not demanding deregulated chaos, they are asking for efficient governance. When government becomes an obstacle rather than a facilitator, frustration naturally intensifies.
That's to make you realize, you know what, that rule's not that important. In Pennsylvania, a bridge collapsed, all of a sudden we go, well, that environmental rule is just not important. We got to build a bridge, it's much more important. And I think the Democratic Party should take a look at and say, we're going to be honest, like we did in 1994 with reinventing government. Everything is on the table, nothing is safe.
Supporters of reform contend that if the Democratic National Committee hopes to rebuild trust in the cities it governs, it must confront overregulation directly. That requires an honest audit of rules that add minimal value and a willingness to eliminate them. Los Angeles is often cited as a cautionary example. Residents face high taxes yet see infrastructure projects inch forward, housing initiatives stall, and budgets swell beyond projections. Across California, major developments can sit idle for years, not for lack of funding or ambition, but because permits and procedural hurdles accumulate. Reform advocates argue this pattern signals administrative paralysis rather than progressive achievement. Voters, they insist, are less interested in slogans and studies than in visible progress. To demonstrate competence, Democratic leaders would need to emphasize speed, transparency, and accountability, cut unnecessary red tape, and deliver tangible improvements that restore confidence where daily governance matters most.
Do you think that Mamdani's election will lead more financial organizations to leave New York City for Wall Street South in Florida? Tell me, I've read that term just recently, Wall Street South, Florida. This is your state. What is that?
A lot of Wall Street guys have moved to Palm Beach. It's been happening really since COVID. It's accelerated with increases in taxes. It's not just out of New York. It's New Jersey, Connecticut, it's Chicago, it's California.
So they're fleeing high tax blue states for Florida.
None of this should come as a shock. In recent years, a steady stream of prominent individuals and major corporations has relocated from states such as California and New York. These moves are not random coincidences, but calculated decisions driven by dissatisfaction with political leadership. Business owners frequently cite steep taxes, dense regulation, and what they describe as an increasingly unfriendly climate for expansion and investment. Residents raise separate but related concerns. worsening public safety, deteriorating infrastructure, and a soaring cost of living that feels disconnected from public services delivered. Many of those leaving once considered these places home and contributed to their growth and identity. Their departures often reflect reluctance rather than impulse. Still, when affordability erodes, opportunity narrows, and security feels uncertain, even deep roots can loosen. Observers argue that this outward migration signals deeper structural problems. Ignoring it risks accelerating decline rather than revering course through practical reform.
This is the luckiest guy in the world that Mandani got elected, because his district is going to explode. My house, I live 8 miles outside of Queens, has gone up 20% in value since Mandani announced. Okay? Because people aren't going to pay the punishing taxes. New York is the highest tax state in the union.
But you said your house value's gone up.
Yeah, because they're moving to Nassau County.
Oh, they're moving out of the city.
Out of the city, and they can still take the train back in the city and not pay the millionaire's tax or whatever crazy thing this guy wants. But what people don't understand is he can't raise the taxes unless the state okays it.
New York's political direction is already generating unease throughout the city. As Zohran Mamdani gains visibility in the mayoral race, some residents and investors are reassessing their long-term plans. Much of the anxiety centers on economic policy, particularly proposals for a so-called millionaire tax. High earners, who already shoulder significant state and local taxes, interpret the measure as punitive rather than growth-oriented. Supporters frame it as a fairness initiative, but critics argue it risks shrinking the very tax base the city depends upon. Instead of prioritizing crime reduction, housing affordability, and essential services, detractors say leadership appears focused on redistributive messaging that plays well politically but may deter capital. The central fear is straightforward. Higher taxes could accelerate the departure of entrepreneurs, investors, and employers, reducing jobs and investment. For some, relocating now feels less like a political statement and more like an act of financial self-protection.
They don't understand that. They don't know what seizing the means of production is, but Ken Griffin does. He's the big Wall Street titan. He knows what it is, and that's why he's down in Palm Beach.
We'll see if they move. I mean, you saw Bill.
They're going to move.
Well, look,
they're already moving.
Hold on, Bill Ackman.
No, they're not.
Hold on.
People say they're going to move all the time after elections. They don't do it.
Bill Ackman said he was going to move.
You know how many people moved out of New York City in the last 3 years? 600,000. They're moving.
It is difficult for some observers to understand why Bill Maher appears reluctant to acknowledge what they see as an obvious pattern. Population outflows from several Democratic-led cities and states are measurable, and critics attribute much of that shift to governance concerns. Figures such as Joe Rogan have publicly left California, citing high taxes, expanding bureaucracy, public safety worries, and overall quality of life issues. Beyond celebrity moves, corporations have relocated headquarters or reduced their footprint to avoid regulatory burdens and elevated operating costs. When companies depart, jobs and investment often follow, reinforcing economic strain in the communities they leave behind. Detractors argue that dismissing this migration as anecdotal overlooks a broader structural trend. While debates continue about the precise causes, the movement itself is tangible. For many residents, relocation reflects practical calculation rather than ideology. When public policy appears misaligned with daily realities, people increasingly choose mobility over frustration.
You know how many people moved out of your state, California?
Oh, I know.
Under Newsom?
Yeah, no. People do move. There's no doubt about that. People move in America, and you're right.
No, but they're not moving because they want a better view. They like to keep more of their money that they earn.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Florida is a really good case study. So when DeSantis became governor, there were 250,000 more registered Democrats in Florida when he became governor 8 years ago. Now there's 1.4 million more registered Republicans in Florida. That's all migration from COVID and re-registration from COVID, 100%. Right. So it absolutely is happening.
Across the United States, a broader pattern is emerging that critics argue cannot be overlooked. Cities such as Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, long celebrated for culture, innovation, and economic dynamism, are now frequently cited in debates about governance challenges under Democratic leadership. Concerns commonly raised include elevated taxes, dense regulatory systems, struggling schools, rising crime in certain areas, and slow-moving public services. Commentators like Rahm Emanuel and Fareed Zakaria, along with numerous local analysts, suggest that when policy emphasizes ideology or symbolism over practical delivery, public confidence erodes. Workers worry about neighborhood safety. Entrepreneurs question whether expansion is worth the regulatory hurdles. families assess affordability and long-term opportunity before deciding whether to stay. High-profile relocations by celebrities and corporations amplify the perception of decline, but everyday households make similar calculations on a quieter scale. Supporters of reform argue that restoring trust would require streamlining regulations, improving fiscal discipline, strengthening public safety, and focusing relentlessly on measurable outcomes. Governance, they contend, ultimately outweighs rhetoric. If city leaders can demonstrate competence, efficiency, and responsiveness, confidence may return. If not, migration trends could persist, reshaping the political and economic landscape of America's largest urban centers for years to come.